From near-death experiences to the devastation of homelessness, how and where do we find the will to overcome insurmountable odds? And when we do overcome these challenges, how do we pass that story of survival on to others? Life on the Rocks is that place where these stories are heard from those who live to tell them. And now, here is your host, Kyle Miller.
Welcome to the show where today's guest shares how he got fired from his job at being in the shop, opening up his own shop, and clients writing him bad checks and bouncing them, to working over 16 hours a day for 8 years, all to change it up, to now owning multifamily, commercial space, retail space, and medical space, making more money than he ever has before and living on his own terms. Kaleb Marti, man, welcome to Life on the Rocks, brother. So excited to have you on the show. I met you out in Vegas at an event. Then I've been following you on Facebook for the last year. Just had a little baby girl a month ago. You're into multifamily, retail, office, medical space in the real estate world. You've owned a ton of businesses before. Man, I'm just excited to pick your brain about this stuff and see where it goes, brother.
Absolutely. I appreciate you having me on here. I'm excited to share.
Man. So you got this truck you drive. It's a what, 2,500 or 3,500?
3,500.
3,500 GMC white, and you roll around and it says what? Bulletproof car? What does it say? No.
Multifamily cartel.
Multifamily cartel. And that thing is wicked looking. I love seeing that thing posted up there. It's pretty cool. But you weren't always in that in the real estate stuff. What was the progression to get to where you're at today? And how did it all start for you, man?
So a little bit of it was really out of necessity. I worked for a hot rod shop whenever I was maybe 20 years old. And we built a couple cars that went to the SEMA show in Las Vegas. And the painter that I worked with at the time wanted to go to the SEMA show to see the cars that we built, get to stand beside them, kind of show off. And he had kind of one of those personalities where he just either got his way or he was leaving.
Right.
The boss told him that he wasn't going to go to the SEMA show. He had to stay and work. So kind of smarted off to the boss and said, well, Kaleb and I are going to go start our own hot rod shop. And I knew none of this was happening, by the way. I was just oblivious to the side. I needed the money, so I had to stay and work regardless. But he mouthed off to him. I didn't know any of that happened. So a couple hours later, I get called into the boss's office, and he's like, today's your last day. You can come back later and grab your tools. I was just, I was like, what are you talking about? I'm trying to buy a house. I was trying to get my shop open because I was doing one on the side. But that's how he hired me. I was just tuning cars and wrenching on cars on the side. And he was having to hire me to come into his shop to do work on cars. So it ended up time for him. But I was blown away whenever he let me go because I had no fallback plan. I didn't have any money saved up. It was just kind of a train wreck. So I lost my house loan, couldn't finish the shop because I didn't have any money to finish it. So long story short, I ended up walking into my bank to tell them that I lost my job and wanted to know when I was going to be closing my house. And apparently when you're 20 years old and self-employed, they don't do house loans. So I would have kept my mouth shut. I probably would have closed the house and had no problem. But ended up losing the house loan and kind of got thrown into a shop full time. So I just kind of had to make it work. So posted on Facebook and said, not only will I work on your hot rods, I'll work on your farm trucks or grandma's car, matter, whatever paid. And that was pretty rough, honestly. I figured out I was working for $35 an hour when everybody else was working for $85 and $90 an hour.
Right.
A few years to figure out that I wasn't even making enough to pay the bills, but luckily a guy kind of took me under his wing a little bit and said, you need to charge more. And I was afraid to charge more because I thought that it'd make people, not use me because I was too expensive. And
right.
Pretty much promised me, if you raise your price, you'll be twice as busy as what you are now. And I did. I doubled my price, and I was at least twice as busy as what I was before. I don't know what it was about that price point, but all of a sudden.
Well, it's got to be somebody. It's probably that. Hey, you're just in there, just trying to make some money, and then just the mental aspect of those people. Why is it so cheap? Does he know what he's doing? You know what I mean? Because I'm getting twice the bid on everywhere else to get this thing done, or know that it's going to cost twice as much somewhere else. Yeah. And That's probably why. Oh, now this guy knows what he's doing.
It's that simple. I mean, it's like just as soon as we started raising our prices, we just got busier and busier and busier, and kind of burnt myself out just because we were so busy. But
So how long did you run that shop?
so I closed it down 2 years ago, I think. So I ran it 9 to 10 years, somewhere in there.
Okay.
I was kind of stepping out of it those last couple of years, trying to find somebody else to run it, and it just wasn't possible.
Gotcha.
Too advanced of a shop as far as diagnostics and the work we were doing that I couldn't hire anybody that could replace my skill set in that realm.
Gotcha.
So, and I named the business after me. At the DM event, they're talking about the dancing bear.
Yeah.
That was whenever he's talking about that, I was like, yeah, I created one of those. Couldn't
Right.
sell it because it had my name on it, and I didn't want somebody else to run my brand ground. So had to take a multi-million-dollar a year business and just close the door. And
How many cars were you running through there at the peak? Like when you built it from $35 now, getting fired, basically let go. And then you're like, oh shit, here we go. Got to do this to make some money. And so you're working on one car. I mean, you already had some of the skills to do this. Have you always been kind of like a wrencher, like knowing what's going on with cars? Because I don't have any clue.
I don't believe I did early on, but I developed it pretty quickly. I was pretty mechanically inclined, and I worked on equipment for my dad and stuff because he had a small construction company, and so we'd work on backhoes and dump trucks. And so I picked up on it, but I had a passion for hot rods and race cars, so I just buy stuff and tear it apart, see if I can put it back together, make it a little faster. And kind of one of those things when you have ADHD, you kind of over obsess on some stuff and get really good at one thing, and that's about it. But so that kind of it gave me enough experience to kind of start learning and growing in the mechanic field.
Gotcha. And then how many cars were you running? Like at your peak, how many cars were you putting out?
I want to say we were turning 170 tickets a week. As far as that could be from an oil change clear up to an engine swap.
Now, would there be multiple tickets on one car or just a ticket a car?
That was usually a ticket per car.
Okay.
So I did a giant billboard on the interstate that said, "Your wife is hot, get your AC fixed." And I really didn't do it for anything other than branding and to be funny, but
it
blew up our AC evac and recharge business.
Okay.
So we had people just driving from all over the place, or people be going down the interstate and see that we worked on AC, and they just pull in and say, "Hey, can you fix my air conditioner?" And we were good at them. I mean, we could do them pretty fast, but that business is probably the most profitable side of it for us, even though we had these $250,000 cars down to $60,000 Corvettes sitting there being worked on.
Right.
We didn't make as much money on those as we did the old lady's evac and recharge on our Crown Vic. You run so many of them through there but it gave us those higher end cars, kind of gave us the credibility to when we bid a job or gave somebody a diagnostics recommendation.
Just them being in the shop.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So like, oh wow, if these cars are here, they can definitely work on mine.
Yeah. I mean, it made it where having those there made it where we could charge the $85 to $100 an hour shop rate, higher for our market. You get into other markets and it's double that. But for our market, those were top tier rates. I mean, there probably wasn't many people charging more than us, which we just didn't have any more techs. We had more cars than we could work on the parking lot. So it was kind of the only thing you could do to be more profitable is raise prices. But we were kind of at the top. And so it's like, what do you do to pass that?
Tapped out right there.
We really were. It was my building wasn't big enough to go any bigger. I couldn't get any more skilled technicians that could come work for us. My guys were driving an hour to work every day anyway. So,
oh wow!
Just
how many employees did you have?
At one time, I think we had 6.
Okay.
But I was producing probably as much as 3 to 4 of them myself because I was 7 days a week.
Right.
16, 18-hour days. I just cleaned house. So, I mean, the shop grossed a ton. We grossed like we were 10 to 12 employee shop, but
Gotcha.
it just wasn't sustainable. I did it for 8 years and it burnt me out. I just never seeing daylight. We didn't put any windows when I built it because they were expensive, so it's just pretty miserable.
Just big fans blowing, always hot.
Yeah, I didn't install fans either. So we just had that one in the corner that just blow kind of across. It was just major learning experience. And I didn't even have heat for like the first 6 years or electricity. I just had one shop light or a exterior security light off of a lamp pole. I just had it up in one side of the shop with an extension cord run over from my house. And there just was no heat. So you go pick up a wrench and it was almost like an icicle that you were holding. And
man.
It was so miserable.
So you go through that, you build that up, because I know you've owned a bunch of other businesses. I mean, do you buy them? Are you buying those businesses within the time that you're running the shop? Or, I mean, because you got so much time on your hands doing this,
So I bought a pizza place while we were running the shop. And then I started a car lot. I'm trying to think. I think I bought my dry cleaners when I had the shop. Kind of towards the very end, I started the liquor store with a partner. It was one of those things. I was just trying to find a way out of there, if that makes sense. It was,
yeah.
I didn't want to lower my income by slowing down.
Right.
There is no way to increase it or offset that loss in that shop. We were tapped out. I was charging the max markup. I was just tapped. And that's kind of a depressing place to be. I don't know. It's hard to explain, but
knowing that you can't go anymore. Like, yeah, I mean, it's like putting a governor that goes 65 miles an hour on a Corvette or a Lamborghini, right?
Yeah.
Put a governor on there and you're like, come on, let's go. And you can't go any further, faster. And that's what you are.
Yeah.
You're the sports car, but you're sitting in a vehicle that's only allows you to go 65.
Yep. And that's what it's like. And I mean, a lot of the businesses that I bought in that time period weren't extremely profitable. I mean, they were from an ROI standpoint, but the labor it takes to run $1 million a year net business is less than it is a business that nets $100,000 a year.
Right.
Like I was so hands-on on those other businesses that I couldn't really grow any of them very big. They were just a new point. And so we started kind of looking at bigger businesses. Finally, it just took me several years to figure that out. And then now, of course, just owning any of them was like liquid gold because people are trying to buy up everything they can get their hands on right now. That's a business. And we grew them quite a bit, don't get me wrong there, but we weren't seeing the scalability that we wanted out of just traditional small businesses. Financing was very hard in my market for buying a business.
Yeah.
Even starting one. I mean, none of the local banks want to fund a small business here. If it's not a piece of real estate or a piece of equipment,
right,
they can't wrap their heads around it or they just don't want to.
Right.
So we were seeing some pretty major scalability issues just in small business as well.
Okay. So you're getting there and you realize, hey, listen, these aren't the vehicles that are going to take me to where I want to be. What's the one that like really opened your eyes and go, oh, this is the route that I want to go. This is the direction that I think that can like really open me up and go about that way.
So on the real estate side, I'd say it was my first few single family homes really started opening my eyes just because we were having some pretty major equity gains and the cash flow wasn't extremely significant to me.
Okay.
At that point in time, you kind of undervalue that cash flow whenever it's smaller, but once you get that big system built, then the cash flow's a big win. But I had like 70 single family doors before I switched to multifamily.
Hold on. When did you buy all these 70 single family doors?
That was 2016 to 2018. I think I bought single families.
And this is after you got rid of the shop or during it?
So it was right at the end. I'd kind of just started stepping out of the shop, trying to find somebody else to run it. And so I was remodeling and managing and maintaining the single families just kind of an evening and nighttime, thinking that maybe be my transition out.
Right.
70 single family homes is really a lot for one person to handle by themselves.
Yeah.
And it wasn't really enough to be significant money to replace an income like that shop was producing. So I was getting frustrated. And that's when I started looking into multifamily, because there was a guy that spoke at a single family event that I was actually at, but he was doing multifamily. And I met him at a mixer after, and he said, why aren't you doing multifamily? I was like, well, I don't like dealing with apartments. They turn over too often. And my small multifamily stuff that I had, I was like, it's just frustrating to me, where a single family home, they might be in it for 5 years and I never mess with it.
Right.
And he kind of got a smirk on his face and he said, yeah, but have you ever made $1 million on one single family house? I was like, no. And he said, well, I just sold my apartment complex for a $5.2 million gain and I only owned it a year. So at that point, my wheels were turning. I was like, man, that makes some sense, And he's like, and then he said, I've probably spent less time on my apartment complex than you have your single family house too. And then I was like, dang, that probably makes sense to, just got my wheels turning a little bit. And so whenever I got back, I just immediately started running with multifamily. I think that was sometime in 2018, and I closed on my first multifamily in October of 2018.
So October 2018 was your first multifamily. How many units was that? I mean, can you tell me, like, did you feel you're buying these 70s? So go back to the 70s. You're buying these single family homes. Are you buying them with a bank loan and then turning them over and refinancing them out, or private money and then refinancing them out? Or are you buying them with a bank loan each time?
I was buying them with a bank loan. So one of the things that I just did wrong right out of the gate, because I didn't know there's like Bigger Pockets or any of this stuff. You could go get all kinds of free information. And I'm a learner anyway. So I started buying them through a bank. I put my 20% down. Actually, I pulled $12,000 off of one of my credit cards and put it down on a couple of cheap houses. And then I remodeled them just out of cash flow from my shop. And terrible idea, like the worst way of doing it. So when they were done, these houses were worth $60,000 to $70,000 a piece, and I might owe $25,000 to $30,000 on them. Okay, I just kept acquiring them like that. I'd pull a little bit out of one, and I kind of the Burr method, but I didn't realize it was the Burr. I just pull enough out of it for a down payment on a couple more, and just a mess. Like I was reinventing the wheel over and over and over again. Somehow we made it to 70 single family homes and realized there was, I don't remember how much equity, but it was probably close to $1 million in equity that I could get my hands on at that time. Right. But I didn't have enough tax returns for them to just release $1 million in equity. But I was able to get enough out to get that first 48 unit complex.
Gotcha. So you're okay. So that's where you got your down payment. You bought that by yourself, no syndication. You put the down payment down on the 48 unit, and now you own that.
And very shortly after that, I bought another 48 unit complex. Like I just kind of fell in love. I mean, I think we did a 45-day close on the next one. I want to say we closed it a month and a half, first 48 units.
Gotcha. Man, just going after it. And then you still had your 70s, and then you bought basically 93 units or 98 units or whatever that is. And so now you've got some decent cash flow coming in off of those then.
Yeah. So we bought those. So with them being in 2018, I think we were averaging about $30,000 a door that we were paying for them.
Okay.
And I was buying materials in a large enough bulk then. I can't remember if we had $2,000 to $3,000 a door in remodel materials. And then I just had a couple guys helping me, and we remodeled all of them.
Gotcha.
So when we were done, those two complexes, I think together were worth, I think 6.2 million, and I owed just under 3 million on them in about 6-8 months time. Something like
nice.
That. So then it was kind of that light bulb. Finally, it's like, okay, I'm in the space I want to be in. And now then I don't know what they're probably worth 90 to 95,000 a door on those complexes. So the market's definitely up right now, but just at that time, they were probably.
Gotcha. That's pretty cool. I mean, you've always been a hard worker, right? You're always going after it, getting after it. I mean, you got your hands in everything. Did you have stuff fall? Did you were you running low on cash at points in time? Did you think you were ever going to get to this point where you are today? Just to hear to the 98 units, what was some of the hardest times during that point?
Man, there was just in the time with the shop, even there was so many cash crunches because I couldn't get financing. So anytime I wanted a new piece of equipment, it came directly out of cash flow. So that means I didn't eat for 3 months. Like it was just every dime that it made, I'd either have to pay for the materials that we were putting on people's or the parts we were putting on people's cars. And if we didn't do that, then it was going to equipment for the shop, then electrical. I still didn't have concrete even 3 or 4 years into it. So we poured concrete because it's just a pole barn. So we poured concrete cash flow because I didn't want any debt. I was just deathly afraid of debt when really I was cash crunching myself so hard. $1,000 problem could have probably taken me out. You know what I mean? Just because I was so tight that there's many times that I was handing a check to the parts people at 5:30.
Just so he couldn't cash it that day?
Just so I could stay up all night long finishing a project, knowing they were going to pick it up that morning. I go put the bank before the check comes through. And that just, that was a miserable, I mean, that went on forever, it felt like. And then rolling change to pay my guys in the shop. You know, just no money there sometimes, or we'd take a bad check. You know, I had some $10,000 bad checks from clients that are worth multiple millions of dollars. They just canceled the check and know there was nothing that I was going to do to them.
Really?
Yeah, it was very frustrating.
And so you did all the work and then boom.
I learned a lot about how you can get around that stuff. So like one of them I accepted, it was like $10,800 check. Actually, whenever I was buying my pizza place, it was the last payment. As soon as I got that money, I went and paid off the pizza place from the guy I was buying it from. I couldn't take over until I finished paying for the pizza place. And the last check, I had to call him and say, hey, or I got a call from my bank and they said, hey, that check that you wrote to Danny isn't going to clear. We're going to have to pull the funds out of his account. And I was like, well, don't pull them out of his account. Give me time to put something together and go make my account.
Right.
Good. Like, and why is a check that I deposited not clearing? That was 2 weeks ago. And they said, well, he actually has up to 10 business days or something like that to cancel a check, which never heard of that in my entire life. But I was like, looking back now, I probably would have raised more heck with the bank than what I did because it was pretty shady on shady on the bank. But at the end of the day, I still had to call Danny and say, hey, that check that I wrote you is no good. Give me a week to make it right. And I know Danny really well now, but back then he was like, oh man, I'm barely going to survive, without that money. Go ahead and, get me paid as soon as you can. When now I know that he was very wealthy, but he was just
just testing you, huh?
Yeah. And so it took me 2 days, I think, if I remember right, to get the cash to take to him. And I was just so embarrassed, just having to get your check bounced and then go make it right. That was pretty tough, but he was very nice about it.
Well, and there's things like that happen, man. I mean, like a friend of ours, Butler, he just made a great post today. He's like, hey, if you're in the small business world, like, I know what you're going through. And people think like, yeah, people don't pay, people don't do work, people don't do this. They steal from you. They take that. There's all these things that happen while running a business. And anybody who's out there running a small business and you're going through it, and you've been in the biz, like, just keep going, man, because like everybody's going through this. It's not just you. Everybody that owns a business goes through this stuff.
Absolutely. Like, I realize it, but everybody is dealing with the same thing at some point in their career.
Yeah. Sometimes it comes at the most inopportune times. You know what I mean? Like, it couldn't be like you're buying this company or buying the pizza shop. You got 10 grand, 10.8. You're counting on being in the account so you can write this guy the check because you're trying to just push and you're spread thin and you're just trying to make it all happen. And the guy doesn't come through. And it's like, I'm sure that just deflates you really hard. And then it's like, all right, guess what? I got to figure out how to do it. Let's go.
Absolutely. It was, looking back now, I don't remember it. At the time, I remember it being just the end of the world. But looking back now, I was like, well, that wasn't really that bad. I've had worse since then. Just every time that problem gets bigger and it's harder to solve. But those problems then that I thought were massive, insurmountable issues, money or revenue solved it, you know?
And then once you push through and you figure out a way to make that happen, and communication is key. Like if you didn't call that guy, right, and just said, and just been quiet, if you didn't call Danny, right, if you didn't call him and tell him, hey, listen, that check's not going to clear. This is what's happening. You know, you're upfront, you're honest with them. You're saying, hey, but I'm going to make it right because I was planning on this happening. It didn't happen. So I got to get you caught up. Like that communication up front with him probably was like, all right, I'm dealing with a stand-up dude because he picked up the phone. He called me when something was going wrong and he told me what the heck was going on. And then he had a plan to figure it out. Like what else could you ask for? Right. And when you're doing a transaction with somebody, whether it's lending money to somebody or doing business or whatever, hey, it didn't go the way it was supposed to go, but this is how I'm going to fix it.
Yeah. It's amazing what that'll do. I mean, you and I deal with enough people, even just in our group, you know, that it's like, if they'll pick up the phone and call you when there's an issue, there is no issue. Really. I mean, or at least give me the chance to help if there's something going on, you know, it's a partnership or any of that. If you're not open and honest about stuff, it'll be 10 times as bad when it comes out.
Exactly. Well, why didn't you tell me that? Well, shit, I didn't think, I was trying to save face. No, man, you only made yourself look even worse when it didn't happen, And 9 times, like I would assume, I don't know this for a fact, but I would think 9 times out of 10, it doesn't even work out the way you're going to work if you're just trying to hold it in tight. And then you got to walk around with that shit. Yeah, and the weight on your shoulders with that just alone will make you have horrible days.
Oh, absolutely.
But it's super exciting, man. And so you're going through that. You bought all these businesses. You've been with like different people, all the employees that you've had. I mean, when you say just be honest and open, that's the number one thing to make business and in life smooth. Communication with your wife, with your employees. Communication and expectations are the number one things that you need to have.
Oh, absolutely. Once somebody breaks that barrier of trust, like especially with employees and spouses, I mean, if you lie one time, nobody ever forgets that. And so it's hard to ever overcome that. And so with employees, lying on timesheets or just lying on little tiny stupid stuff. And it's like, I can't really ever trust you with anything bigger because if you'll lie to me about that, what else will you lie to me about?
Right.
Makes it hard to build a long-term profitable relationship, especially if you move into a partnership with somebody that can't be 100% front with you.
And how long have you been married?
10 years.
10 years. So you have a 1-month-old. And so she's been through this with you on this whole journey.
Yep.
I mean, what has that caused any strains, any relationship issues or just struggles?
Very early on, like the first 6 years were just very tough because we were newly married and spent almost no time together because I was in the shop, leave before she got up, and I came home after she went to bed. So we just never saw each other. And that was challenging just on the relationship side of it, but I also just wasn't a happy person.
Gotcha.
Because I had no life. Like it was just survival mode for so long that I was kind of hard to deal with. And then she finally came into the business with me, quit her job and came in because I was just so overwhelmed and like getting sick from working so many hours and just malnourished almost. And that took a couple years to even adjust to as well, because working with your spouse can be hard.
Yeah.
You take stuff home with you whenever it's been a stressful day. But really past that, I'd say past 7 years, it kind of just became easy. We'd been through so much that there wasn't really going to be anything else that was going to be more challenging than what we had already survived.
Yeah.
Especially, once you have liquidity and good cash flow, there's really not a lot of problems you can't solve with cash and liquidity.
That's right. Time and money are the two biggest factors in relationships. And if you're not spending any time together and you don't have any money, good Lord, that relationship is probably not going to go well. Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
So having both of those is key, because then you can, like you said, you were in survival mode for so long. And I think a lot of people are in survival mode. They're just trying to make it, trying to get to the next day. And hey, we're, whether they're in their business or they're working for somebody and they're not happy there, but they're still in survival mode, you know?
Yeah.
And creating businesses, I truly think that, create your own business, create your own life. Like I've always grown up saying, hey, I'm going to do what I want, when I want, and whoever I want to do it with. And that's going to be like my life motto. I'm not going to work for anybody. I knew, I was standing out in the baseball field back in high school and stuff. We're all talking about, what are you going to do in life? Trying to figure stuff out. And I was like, dude, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I can tell you what, I'm not going to have a boss. I'm not going to be working for somebody, and I'm going to be a millionaire. And like, I knew from the very beginning, like, okay, that's just was in me. I was like, I got to make it happen. And just kept pushing,
It's amazing what just when it'll happen and you believe it, how much easier and faster it comes. Like for the longest part of my entrepreneurship career at the beginning of it, I just didn't believe any of that was possible. Like I just didn't believe I would ever be a millionaire. I didn't ever believe I would just get out of that mechanic. I didn't know how to do anything else.
Right.
But I wasn't getting online and learning. I wasn't networking with people. I wasn't doing any of that. I was working on multi-millionaires' cars, but I never stopped to ask them how they did it, how they, just I have my little blinders on. I'm like, I'm just an auto mechanic. But once I made that transition, it's like, I want more than to be an auto mechanic. It was like the entire world opened up, and it was like, how much do you want to learn and how much do you want to earn? And there's no limit.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely.
I would have had the mindset you had much earlier.
I said that, right? And I was like, well, I want to be a strength conditioning coach. I probably go in, and I don't mind working for somebody to like learn and like, okay, getting under somebody's wing and like learn from that aspect. That's not the job that I'm talking about. Is like, I'm not going to work for somebody and just have a job. So that I always use it as like learning. So I was like, maybe I want to get in strength conditioning and run my own thing. And I got in there, and then I met my wife now. So we were going back and forth, and I swear, I think I was making like $600 a month there. I was at a graduate assistantship at the University of Memphis. I was making $600 a month for the graduate assistantship. So I was taking classes and stuff too. And then I started talking to her, and I said, you know what? I said, this is not because I could see, I was like, man, this isn't the route that I want. The life isn't the way I want. I was able to like look at the older guys in the biz and go, would I want his life? No. What I want, and just kind of see out, forecast out, okay, how many years I got to put in and what kind of lifestyle is this going to be? And I realized really quick that that wasn't what I wanted to do. And my wife was like, well, what do you want to do? I was like, look, I don't know. I don't know yet, but I can tell you one thing. I'm going to be a millionaire. Like my wife, if you ask her now, she was like, okay, Kyle, you're making $600 a month right now, and you're going to be a millionaire. Like, and you don't know how you're going to do it. No, I don't, and it's funny when we talk about it and she tells people that story, because I'm like, she never told me that up front. But then once she did it in front of me, I was like, oh, really? Is that what you thought? And you're like, yeah, I didn't know how you were going to do it, but she believed me. She's like, she had faith. And I think having faith and having that support behind you as well, the good times, the bad times, she was supporting us. She was a nurse. She was supporting us at times whenever I was trying to, my first year in real estate, I made $17,000. And so she was just, I was relying heavily on her to make things happen.
Yeah.
And it just kept going from there. And, but we got to this point, and we're just going to keep going. And it doesn't take as long as you think it's going to take either, you know?
It doesn't, especially if you take the time to research it and grow.
Yeah.
Like, it can take a lifetime if you let it, but if you find out the stuff you need to know that other guys already know, it can shorten that timeline so much.
That's why we go to these groups. That's why we go to talk to these guys. Hey, what are you doing? How are you doing that? How can I do that better? And we try to hang out with guys that are abundant, have that abundance mindset. And we'll share with you, and we'll share how things work and how to do it better and what not to do, more importantly, like stay away from that. That's going to really take you down a rabbit hole, and you're not going to have any time. So, and you listen. The other thing is to be humble enough and don't have this massive ego that says, well, I'm better than that. Learn from everybody, I try to be a sponge every time we go to those things. Okay, how do you do that? What's going on with this? Where's he going with that? And just keep going, you know?
Absolutely. Like I think my entire world changed after my first networking event or mastermind group, because like, wow, there's so much more out there than what I ever imagined or that was in my area of understanding, I guess. It's
Yeah.
just so over my head.
Yeah. But you know what? Would you trade it for all those heartaches, all the hard times? Would you trade it for anything?
No, man, looking back at it, it all sucked, but I learned so much in every scenario that was bad that now then you really don't worry about some of that bad stuff that can happen, because it's like, well, I already know if that happens again, I can fix it by doing this. Or you just build your business in a way that protects you from a lot of those things that almost took you out in the past. Most of it for me was a liquidity issue because I never had cash and I never had any debt. So I had tons of equity, but I couldn't access it. Well, now then I access my equity so that there's cash settings. So if a problem comes up, I can either buy my way out of it or buy enough time to come up with a better way out of it, I guess is
right.
The way
When you have plenty of money and you have good cash flow coming in, you don't have problems.
You really don't. Labor is my biggest problem.
Yeah.
And if I don't bring on any new, I just won't buy anything new. You know what I mean? Like, it's my biggest problem is not growing. That's not a bad problem.
Exactly. It's just all that stuff. And it goes back to that survival mode. Like, hey, I can buy it out. So it doesn't take up that brain space. You're not thinking about it. And then, like you said, you have those experiences from that came into my situation. I took care of that. That came into my life. I took care of that. And then so on. And you build up this resume, right, of all these achievements that you've overcome. And then because you're so used to overcoming those obstacles, any obstacle, it just gives you more confidence. So anything, come on, man, what do you got? Like, I can fix it. I know if I can't fix it, I know somebody to call and we can fix it. And then I got the cash to fix it. Like, boom, Absolutely. There's no problem. A lot of people focus on these little bitty problems and they make these big mountains out of it. And it just consumes their life when it's really just a quick decision.
Man, I had a lady that I met with a couple months back that I think she owed $60,000 or $70,000 in this divorce settlement thing, and she'd been putting off investing because she just wants to get this thing paid off, and yada yada yada. And she's had the equity in her home to pay it all off, but she spent so much time fighting it to not pay off this money. Mm-hmm. I don't understand what all it was, but I kept asking her. I was like, so you could raise your payment on your house $400 a month, and all of this stress and headache goes away, and you can start investing day one.
Right.
But then she had like 10 other reasons as to why she had to get rid of that first and all this stuff. It's like, but for $400 a month,
right,
you're not investing. You're not going to flip your next house. You're not going to start a business because of this $400 a month problem. And you could see it kind of coming over her face. She's like, I'm throwing my whole life away and starting a new business over $400 a month. But she's just looking at $60,000 to $70,000 problem, thinking she had to pay off $1,000 a month or $2,000, whatever her profit was towards that for 6 years.
Right.
And she had equity in her house. Just pay that stupid thing off and move on. Sell your house and go buy another one. Like, whatever.
Right.
But I remember being in those times of trying to figure out what the heck you're going to do of this massive problem that probably 3 years from that conversation, she's going to look back and be like, wow, I passed up on $1 million. In that time, I fought this $70,000 issue. It cost me $1 million.
Exactly. And then I don't even, how'd you get to talking to her about that? Did she come to you with this problem, or it was just kind of, you guys were talking about investing and she says, hey, I have this $60,000 issue?
So she is in our capitalist cartel group that I run with the Butlers.
Gotcha.
So she'd set up a lunch with me and one of the other members and asked us our input on it. And I remember both of us kind of sat there and we're like, wow, that sucks. And then it's like, but man, $70,000, like, would I have gave up my entire real estate career over the last 6 years over $60,000.
Right.
Like, it was a no-brainer setting from where I'm setting, but where she was setting is this massive issue that there's no way she could ever solve it. And it's like, if I handed her $60,000 and made it go away, she would have never done anything. Like it just,
Yeah.
the problem would have been away, but she wouldn't have went and built anything. Like she just needed something to consume her life.
Right.
Well, then getting that taken care of, she's going to be able to go blow up.
And how long did you say she had that problem going on?
I want to say like 5 to 7 years. I think it was over 100,000 that it started out at, and
Okay.
I don't remember all the details, but it's been going on a long time, and she's very talented. Like makes great money, but
It just goes to show, get around people, talk to smart people that are doing things. I mean, the one thing that public schools and stuff, there's a lot of things that I don't agree with. My kids are now homeschooled, but they don't teach you about financial stuff. They don't teach you about how to reach out to your partner. That was called cheating when I was in school. Don't teach how to reach out to your peers. How do I figure out this problem? What do I need to do? That I think that's one of the biggest downfalls, is that people just hold to themselves. They don't tell people they're other people, smart people. Don't tell like somebody that's not doing anything. Talk to smart people who are making things happen, and like, hey, this is the issue I got. How would you solve it?
Yeah.
Like, oh, that's easy. I would just refi out the house. What kind of equity you got? Boom, done. Oh shit, I never even thought about that. Like there's so many things that people can do that they don't, that would help with their success.
And most of it is so easy. I mean, it a lot of the problems we even talk about in the group are just, you can solve them in a 5-minute conversation.
Yeah.
But until you are open enough and say, here's my problem, and willing to take other people's input. I mean, some people just aren't. They have their own way of doing it. No matter what you tell them, they're not going to do anything different.
Right.
Those are the people that you're going to see in the same position in the next 5 years. But
they want to figure it out themselves. Hey, I guess if there's nobility in that,
yeah,
I figured it out myself. Great. You could have had a conversation and been done in 2 minutes and saved you 10 years.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I look at the Butlers, they've only been in real estate for like 2.5 years, and they've got one of the strongest portfolios in the group, but they went and got the knowledge that they needed, and they went and applied it.
Yep.
But it took them 10 years of running their other business to figure out that they wanted to just go pay for the information up front instead of, spending 10 years trying to learn it. They just,
right.
That's something that I wish I did better at,
Yeah.
being even more open-minded. I listen to everything, but sometimes I'm a little closed-minded on stuff that seems too good to be true.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
yeah, I know what you mean.
I could have been early in on Hex, and all you guys were talking about it, and I waited till, 3 or 4 months, whatever the timeline difference was, and that was millions of dollars what I invested. But that was a pretty big eye opener for me.
It's and it's crazy, and it's crypto's not going away. It's going to stay around for a long time, but it's so taking action fast when that information comes. Dude, I missed out on it. I heard about Bitcoin in 2009.
Yep.
Like, what the hell is Bitcoin? And I don't know, Corey Boatwright, Corey, or heard of him? He was the one that was talking about it, and I was like, yeah, I don't know, whatever. Right? I didn't put any thought into it, and then I'm looking at it going, damn, I wish I'd have gotten Bitcoin back. If I'd have put $5,000 just into Bitcoin, just to let it, whatever it was, let it ride and check it out, dude. Yeah. I'd have more money than freaking I'd know what to do with right now.
I owned 14 Bitcoin in 2010. Yeah, it was $140. It was $10 a coin. It was by chance.
Uh-huh.
I always heard about Bitcoin was instant transactions. Well,
right.
It is, you already own the Bitcoin, but for like 9 days you can transfer it out. And I was like, well, that doesn't do me any good. And I was trying to buy some software, a license to some software. And I needed it right then. So sent the $140 in, and I want to say 4 or 5 years went by. This must have been 2016 or 17. It hit 6,800 a coin.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, that's crazy. I remember whenever I bought, and then it was just like light bulb went off. I was like, I still have those. Well, it took me a couple months to find my seed phrases. Also, they say you're not supposed to email them to yourself. Or so I ended up finding them, and it was like $80,000 sitting in my
off $140 investment.
I sold everything like an idiot because I'm like, there's no way this thing is going to go over $6,800. Like,
right.
Stupid, right. So I sold all of it. And then a year later, here it's hitting 50, 60,000. So now then I'll never sell 100% of any cryptocurrency anymore. But man, I could have taken out 100 profit and still, left money in there that would have went up another.
You could have taken out your principal and just played with the house money. You would have felt good at that point.
Just all the way around. I thought I was really smart whenever I sold all that off. I'm a genius, but looking back now, it's dumb. Dumb luck, right place, right time. And luckily I emailed my seed phrases. But
good thing you did. Hopefully now after this that comes out, go change your wallet. Oh, you got rid of them, so you're good.
So I can't even remember what wallet those were in now. I don't even use it anymore, but I'm just on MetaMask now anyways. But man, it was funny then.
It wasn't funny when it hit 60.
No, I felt pretty stupid then whenever I hit 60. Still didn't believe it at that point. I was like, this is a joke. There's no way it's going anywhere. Then the more I researched it, the more I was like, this cryptocurrency is here to stay. It's not going away.
Yeah, definitely not. Definitely not. Well, Kaleb, man, I appreciate you coming on the show, sharing that story. You got your hands dabbling in everything, and you're just killing it. How do people find you?
They can follow me on Facebook or Instagram, Kaleb.Marti.
Okay. Kaleb.Marti.
Yeah.
Cool, man. Check him out, guys. Dude is multifamily units. He's out there making stuff happen. Great dude. And check him out. Hook up with him. And your multifamily cartel, where can they connect with you on that?
So is it on Cartel? That is a group I have with Daniel and Jeremy.
Okay. So gotcha.
This cartel is just a Facebook group. They can join it or go to our multifamilycartel.com website, and it's got some of the information on it as well.
Cool. And you're located in just
Joplin, Missouri.
Joplin, Missouri. So guys, check them out. And again, I appreciate you jumping on the show, brother.
Absolutely. I appreciate you having me.
Yes, definitely. Thanks, man.
See ya.
This is the podcastfactory.com.